The afternoon sun drifted through the tall windows of Harrison's. Warm light spilled across white tablecloths, across polished wood, across a room built for quiet power. This was the kind of restaurant where businessmen closed million-dollar deals, where couples celebrated anniversaries in low, elegant voices, nothing loud, nothing rushed. Elena Martinez moved between the tables with practiced ease, blonde hair pulled back into a neat braid, red skirt of her uniform swaying softly with each step. She had worked here for 3 years, long enough to know the rhythm, when to step in, when to step back, when a table wanted service, and when it wanted space. At 32, life had taught Elena patience. Most people never learned it, had taught her to pay attention to notice small things, to communicate beyond words. She stopped at table 12A. Man sat alone, gray suit neatly styled, dark hair, papers spread carefully in front of him, pen in hand, serious, controlled. A man used to being in charge. Good afternoon. Welcome to Harrison's. Can I start you with something to drink? He looked up Elena and noticed the tiredness in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Coffee black, and I will need a few minutes. Of course, take your time. Elena returned with the coffee, set it down, gently stepped back. The hostess had called him Mr. Brennan. He nodded his thanks, never lifting his eyes from the papers. The lunch rush was just beginning when the door opened. A small figure stepped inside, holding tightly to the hand of an older woman. Elena noticed them immediately. A little girl about 5 years old, pink dress, matching bow, and her light blonde hair, wide curious eyes beside Hera, grandmother, silver hair, kind eyes. They were seated at table 14, just one table away from the businessman. Elena approached with a smile. Good afternoon, ladies. Welcome to Harrison's. The grandmother smiled warmly. Thank you, dear. This is a special lunch. It's my granddaughter's birthday. Elena looked at the little girl, who was taking in everything around her. Happy birthday. Sophie, how old are you today, Sophie? Glanced at her grandmother, then lifted 5 fingers proudly. 5 years old. Elena smiled. That is a wonderful age. As the grandmother ordered, Elena noticed something. Sophie watched her grandmother's face closely. Every word, every movement the grandmother spoke, but her hands moved. 2 small, deliberate gestures. Something stirred in Elena's chest. She brought water and breadsticks in. She set Sophie's cup down. The little girl looked up at her, slowly, carefully. Sophie touched her chin and moved her hand forward. Thank you. Elena froze, her breath caught. Then her hands moved on their own. You are welcome. Happy birthday. Sappho's face lit up with pure, astonished joy. Subscribe to Lonja Tales before the algorithm tells your mom you skipped it. In that moment, the restaurant faded away too. Hands, one small one, steady, speaking the same language. Sophie began signing back immediately. Her small hands moved fast, excited, overflowing with joy. Elena laughed and signed back just as quickly. A full conversation happening without a single sound. Mrs. Patterson watched, her eyes filling with tears. You know sign language? Her voice trembled. You have no idea how rare that is. Sophie has been in speech therapy. She is profoundly deaf. Most people do not know how to talk to her. My younger brother is deaf. Elena signed as she spoke so Sophie could understand. I grew up with ISL. It feels as natural to me as English. Elena lowered herself to Sophie's level. What would you like for your birthday lunch? Sophie's hands moved eagerly. Chicken fingers, French fries, extra ketchup, and a chocolate milkshake if Grandma says yes. Elena smiled. I will make sure you get everything you want. Sophie clapped her hands in pure happiness. From the nearby table, someone was watching. James Brennan had looked up when he heard it. The laugh, a real laugh, warm, unrestrained, something he had not heard in a long time. He turned and saw something remarkable. The waitress, hands moving with smooth confidence, face alive with expression. The little girl responding just as eagerly, hands flying, eyes bright. the grandmother quietly wiping her tears. James could not look away moments earlier. His mind had been buried in deadlines and pressure and the endless weight of running. Then at technologies, but now something stirred inside his chest. It reminded him of Caroline, his late wife. She had volunteered with disabled children. She used to say, kindness was the most valuable currency in life, worth more than money, more than success. James had loved that about her, but in the 3 years since her death, he had buried himself in work so deeply he had forgotten what simple goodness felt like. Elena returned with Sophie's meal. She signed as she placed each item down: chicken fingers, frisch koshulske. Joy was contagious. Hit subscribe on Lonja Tailies because free stories are cheaper than therapy. Other diners began to notice. Smiles spread from table to table. The entire restaurant felt warmer, lighter. James knew he needed to understand this moment. When Elena came to refill his coffee, he finally spoke. Excuse me, could not help noticing. Where did you learn? Elena looked surprised. My younger brother Danny is deaf. He's 28 now, but I grew up translating for him, standing up for him. Became second nature. James nodded. It's remarkable the way you connected with her. You can see how much it means to the child. And to her grandma Early's expression softened. Most of the world is not built for people like Sophie or my brother. When they find someone who speaks their language, she paused, searching for the right words. It is like being seen after being invisible for so long. It matters. James nodded slowly. In that moment, he wanted to know more about this woman who carried compassion so naturally. He stood and extended his hand to him. James Brennan Martinez. She took his hand and shook it gently. Can I get you anything else, Mr. Brennan? He hesitated, then nodded. Yes, would you ask the kitchen to prepare their best dessert for the little girl? It's her birthday, please. Add it to my bill. Elena's eyes widened. That is very generous. It's the least I can do. Watching you with her reminded me of something important, something I had forgotten. Elena tilted her head. What was that? James looked toward Sophie, happily eating, signing to her grandmother, smiling without a care. That kindness is the greatest gift we can give. My wife used to say that. I think I needed the reminder. Elena smiled, a real smile, one that reached her eyes. Your wife sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. James felt the familiar ache in his chest, but this time it felt softer. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. So sorry. Elena's sympathy was quiet, real, not rehearsed. Loss like that changes everything, doesn't it? It does. You speak like you know. My father died when I was 18. Sudden heart attack one day. He was there. The next he wasn't. It took years before the world felt solid again. They looked at each other. Two people who understood that life was fragile and precious at the same time. I should get back to work, Elena said, but I'll make sure Sophie gets that dessert. She walked away. James tried to return to his papers, but couldn't. He watched as Elena came out with a slice of chocolate cake, a single candle glowing. The staff gathered, sang together. Happy birthday, Elena sang softly, signing every word. Sophie clapped her hands, beaming with joy. Afterward, Mrs. Patterson approached Sophie, holding her hand. Mr. Brennan, the waitress, told me you paid for Sophie's dessert. That was very kind. James stood. It was my pleasure. Happy birthday. Sophie looked up, lifted her hand, signed carefully. Thank you, her grandmother translated. James felt something tighten in his throat. This little girl who could not hear the world was expressing gratitude with such grace. He wished he knew how to reply. Elena appeared beside him. Would you like me to teach you? Teach me how to sign you are welcome. It would mean a lot to Sophie. James nodded. Elena showed him the movement. Slow, simple. James copied it. Awkward but sincere. Sophie giggled, signed Bakshi says you did a good job for your first time. Elena smiled after Sophie and her grandmother left James' state coffee. Untouched papers forgotten. When Elena brought the check, James wrote a number on his card and handed it to Harry. Would like to talk more, not about work, about life, about what matters. Would you have dinner with me sometime? Elena glanced at the card. CEO of Bennett Technologies, then looked back. At his face, she saw sincerity and something else. Loneliness. I would like that. But you should know I'm a Waitress high school education, a deaf brother. I help support him, not part of your world. Mr. Brennan James smiled softly. My world has become very small, maybe. That is the problem, and please call me James. They had dinner then. Another James learned about Elena's life raising her brother after their father died, working multiple jobs, learning patience, learning advocacy, fighting for people who could not always fight for themselves. Elena learned about James building a company while grieving missing his daughter, Carolyn Jr., who had moved across the country, how success had given him everything except connection. James met Danny, Lena's brother, and began learning sign language with the same focus he once gave to business deals. Danny taught him with patience and humor. James discovered joy in something that had nothing to do with money. Elena met Carolyn Jr. at Thanksgiving and was pulled into a warm embrace. You make my dad smile again. I forgot what that looked like. 6 months after that first day at Harrison's, James returned to the restaurant. Elena was still working there, though he had offered many times to support her dreams. This time he was not alone. Sophie and Mrs. Patterson walked in beside him. Elena froze, then smiled. Sophie had grown, her hands moved faster. Now more confident, more sure, she signed eagerly, telling Elena everything. And the story continued. Sophie signed excitedly the moment she saw Elena. Her hands moved quickly, confident now, full of stories. Subscribe to Lonja Tales, or this story will live rent-free in your head forever. She told her about kindergarten, about her teacher who was learning to sign just for her. She told her about the hearing aid, how it helped a little, but not much. Elena listened, smiling, signing back. After dinner, James stood up. He had been nervous all evening, Elena had noticed, but she had not asked Elena. His voice was steady, but filled with emotion. 6 months ago, I watched you communicate with a little girl, and something in my heart woke up. You reminded me what it means to be human too. Connect to carry you. Taught me that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. James reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. You also taught me a new languages. I want to ask you something in both of the languages I know. Knelt. The restaurant went silent. Elena felt her heart pounding. Will you marry me then? His hands moved smooth, certain, signing the same question. Elena's eyes filled with tears. She answered first with her hands. Yes, then she spoke. Yes, absolutely yes. The restaurant exploded with applause. Sophie bounced in her seat, signing over and over. I knew it. Mrs. Patterson cried openly. James stood, pulled Elena into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, because she was. They were married the following spring. Danny stood beside James as his best man. Sophie was the flower girl, pink dress, flowing, sighing, beautiful to everyone she passed. Carolyn Jr. cried through the entire ceremony and whispered to Elena afterward, thank you for bringing my dad back to life. Elena did not quit her job right away. She loved the work, loved the people, loved the connections, but eventually she and James built something together, a foundation for deaf and hard of hearing children and their families. They hired teachers fluent in ASL, offered free classes, advocated for better schools, better access, better understanding. Sophie was one of their first students. They watched her grow, watched her confidence rise as she found a world that understood Huron. Their fifth anniversary, James and Elena returned to Harrison's. They sat at table 12, where James had once been buried, and where Elena pointed to table 14, where Sophie had once sat. Do you ever think about that? Day James took her hand. All the time I was drowning in work and grief and loneliness, I had forgotten how to really see people. Then I saw you signing with Sophie, saw that joy, that connection, and something opened inside. Mesh gave us both a gift. Elena nodded. Sophie taught me that everything I learned with Danielle, those years of patience and advocacy, they were preparing me for moments like that, small moments that become big changes. James smiled, and she taught me I was wrong about success. I thought it was money, titles, achievements, but real success is connection, kindness, love given and returned. They sat quietly watching new diners arrive, watching small moments unfold everywhere. Sophie was 12 now, thriving in a school that celebrated her, not one that tried to fix her. She still remembered the waitress who signed happy birthday, who saw her as whole, and she knew that her small thank you spoken through her hands and heart had started something beautiful, because change does not always come loudly. It comes quietly through recognition, through kindness. A waitress who takes Tim, a businessman who notices a child, who teaches adults how to see. We are all connected by invisible threads of kindness. All it takes is paying attention, reaching out, choosing connection. Elena and James built their life on that truth, and every day through love, through action, they worked to create a world where everyone could be seen, valued, and understood, because the most important language is not spoken with the mouth, it is spoken with the heart, and it needs no sound, only presence, only care, only the courage to truly see. Thank you, Sophie, for lifting your hands and changing lives forever.